Hello dear friends. In this video, I will tell you two real and scary stories. So stay with us. Here is the first story. Ghosts of Philadelphia Prison. We have told many stories and anecdotes about deserted places inhabited by Amma. And they are clans of jinn who live in places deserted by its people for more than 40 days without any feet setting foot in the place. And for this reason we are not the only beings present on the face of the earth or in the present world. We cannot see the jinn, but we feel their presence wherever they are. In the city of Nagasaki, Japan, 15 kilometers away from it, there is a distinct island called Hashima. That island that lies in the middle of several other islands, but it is the most distinguished because it takes the shape and form of a warship. In addition to being completely abandoned for many years, in addition to being located over a wide area of huge mines, which contained coal in huge quantities under the ocean in that spot. And perhaps this was the reason for the residents to resort to it, since in 1887 AD, when a number of residents resided on that island, they established some school buildings and simple cafes, and life proceeded in an almost average manner, until coal mines were discovered below it. So many flocked to it, and the buildings that turned into markets, restaurants, and a full life in this isolated island was greatly promoted by trade. During the Second World War, the island was transformed into a place more like a prison, where Korean prisoners and many Chinese slaves were sent to the island and were pumped in huge numbers to extract the largest quantities of coal from within those mines. Of course, we expect how the treatment of these prisoners was. Their lives turned into hell, where they were given the worst food and the least in quantity, in addition to being tortured and forced to work for extremely long hours that humans could not bear, and without the slightest measure of comfort, as they were woken up early to work like beasts without tirelessness or rest, until midnight, and without providing any aid to treat the sick from them. Rather, they were left to die inside the mines, and the bodies that were thrown into any empty corner to decompose slowly were not respected. Diseases afflicted all the prisoners of the mines, and they were subjected to starvation, brutality, and injustice, and many of them died under the land of the island. Of course, life on the land of the island was very different, as trade flourished, which raised the value of its economic condition, and by 1959 it became one of the most inhabited places literally on earth, the face of the earth, while workers under its land suffer from death and face it alone as they were left to die like insects. Employment increased and income increased with it, but by 1974 AD, oil replaced coal and the economy of the island began to gradually collapse, as the mines continued to operate until they stopped working. All of a sudden, the government closed it with a strict decision, and it was announced that the island would be evacuated, and that it was time for all residents to emigrate. Why? No one knows yet, but the residents are already gone, and the island has been evacuated so quickly that many left their personal belongings without taking them with them. This, of course, concerns the above-ground inhabitants of the island. But what about the workers? Of course, no one paid any attention to them, and they were left alone, and no one knows whether they were deported with the population or not. Everything that has been documented so far indicates that the island is completely empty of the population above and below. Life ceased, and voices appeared. The sounds of screams, torment, and words coming from under the ground. Passing ships and sailboats can hear them from a distance, but without one of them stopping next to the deserted island. That city that did not set foot on its land until 2009 AD, as it remained deserted throughout those years, and it was reopened again and classifying it as one of the places inhabited by ghosts in the world. But when it was opened, the city was not completely opened, but only 3% of the city, while the rest of the city remained closed until now. And it is also forbidden for planes to photograph it. And until this time, sounds are still heard, whether over the land of the island or under it, as if the inhabitants are still there, And it is interesting to note that no birds fly over the island. Tough story of the ghosts of a Virginia prison. The story of the ghosts of a Virginia prison. The court imposed the death sentence on so and so. How often have we heard that famous sentence in many movies and serials? But have we thought about the nature of the execution process itself? And the spirit that ascends at that time? Does it remain in the room? Or does it ascend to its innocent? Is everyone executed a perpetrator? Or are some of them innocent? Methods of execution around the world. There are many methods of execution, and they differ from one country to another. In some Arab countries, execution is carried out by hanging. In it, the offender climbs to the highest base called the tablin, and the rope is wrapped around his neck and covers his head with a black cover. Then the drum is removed from under his feet, and the body hangs, causing a fracture of the neck vertebrae, cutting the spinal cord, and he dies immediately. As for neck beating, it is a method in which the neck is struck with a sword, and cutting off the head completely and separating it from the body, which is a method of execution used in several countries such as the Kingdom, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Chechnya. And it is the fastest method of execution if the swordsman is experienced, and the sword is sharp enough. There is also the method of execution by electric chair. That method in which the person scheduled to be executed is seated on the electric chair, and electricity is transmitted to his body with a force of up to 2000 volts for 15 continuous seconds until the heart stops working. And during that process, the body temperature reaches 60 degrees Celsius, and the internal organs begin to burn in the person's body, the executed. Another method, which is execution by gas, and it has been used in the United States of America and North Korea since 1920 AD, in which the person is installed inside a sealed room, and the deadly gas tube that the accused inhales is opened until he dies. See suffocation. It is similar to the electric chair, but it is intended for suffocation, and that method was used in Spain until 1974 AD. Also the method of execution by lethal injection, and it was known in the United States of America, where various poisons are used, and the accused is injected with it, where it causes complete paralysis of the body and the functions of the internal organs of the body, until the heart muscle stops working, and it takes a time ranging from 11 to 17 minutes until death occurs. And finally, the execution by firing squad. This method appeared with the invention of firearms and began to be used in military rulings, specifically prison ghosts transferred from West Virginia prison. Many death sentences were carried out in this prison, and it was called the deserted prison. And many stories were told about it, confirming the existence of ghosts inside it. This prison was opened in 1866 AD, and in 1929 an expansion was made to the prison because of its overcrowding, and the first execution that took place there was in 1899 AD. And the executions continued until a decision was issued by the state to close this prison, which puts prisoners in harsh conditions due to its overcrowding and the small size of the cells in it. And it was actually closed in 1995 AD. All the prisoners were transferred to other prisons. Many were among the reports about seeing ghosts inside this abandoned prison, where the ghost of a maintenance worker was seen from the prison, where he worked in the prison during his work, and the prisoners stabbed him to death in retaliation for the prison administration. This is not the only ghost, as many residents near the prison have reported they heard the sounds of crying and wailing of prisoners and their torture coming from inside the abandoned prison after midnight. And it is said that these sounds were the main reason for the transfer of prisoners, as many of them were afflicted with mental illnesses and paranoia as a result of the presence of ghosts in the prison, appearing to them in the middle of the night, every day. If you liked the video, do not forget to like and subscribe to receive all new updates. Thank you and